Hey guys, welcome back. So I'm finally getting around to doing a bit of an update for Victober. I've been so busy with the Sherlocktober part of this month and filming and everything that I just haven't been able to get a film up for this. But I have been reading, and also Sherlocktober's kind of bled into my Victober, so I'll explain more of that later. So anyway, in terms of the challenges so far, I've completed, is it 2? 3. Actually, I've completed 3 Victober challenges so far. The first one was read a book with a proper noun in it, and I had chosen Carmilla. This is by J. Sheridan Le Fanu. It's sort of a female-centric vampire story written over 20 years before Bram Stoker came out with Dracula. I think Dracula was just a much more powerful novel, a little bit more depth to it than this one, but still it was pretty interesting. Carmilla being our vampire, also known as Marcilla and the Countess Karnstein throughout the book. It's narrated by a young girl by the name of Laura. She lives with her father alone in a castle. I wouldn't say alone, there is household staff. She has 2 governesses. She lost her mother in infancy, so it's just pretty much the 2 of them within her family in this castle that's like some 7 miles away from the nearest village, 20 miles away from the nearest other castle, inhabited castle. There's a village, an uninhabited village, only 3 miles away, that's fallen into disrepair, but it really sets like a gothic feel to it, that isolation of it and everything. It talks about this ruined town, moldering cemeteries and things like that, so you get a definite feel for the atmosphere and everything. So Laura recounts the story of when she was a child at the very beginning, and being visited by a strange young woman. She wakes up in the middle of the night and sees her standing at the foot of her bed. She's frightened at first, and then this young woman climbs into bed with her and comforts her and holds her close till she falls asleep, until she's like awoken violently by a strange, sharp stabbing feel in her chest, and she wakes up and screams. And by the time anybody shows up, there's nobody else in the room but her, and they all kind of sum it up to like she just had a dream. As the story progresses, she's anticipating the arrival of a young woman who lives in the castle nearby, the general's daughter. She's supposed to stay there, I think, through the summer or something, as a companion for her. But something happens, that they receive a letter from the general saying that this girl died suddenly of mysterious circumstances. He is engaged in something right now. He can't go into detail, but he will explain more about how his daughter died at a later date. And then this strange event occurs where her and her father both witness the crash of a horse-drawn carriage. The occupants are thrown from the carriage. There's a young woman there who's unconscious, and her mother is in a state of anxiety. She is on some life-or-death mission, and she has to get to a certain location, but she can't take her daughter with her in this condition, and she begs Laura's father to let her stay with them. It's going to be for a period of 3 months. I mean, what kind of crazy mother would leave their child with a stranger in her state for 3 months? It must have been a pretty serious life-or-death thing that she's, involved in, but they agree to it. The father thinks, well, now she'll have a companion with her during this time, and the shocking thing is when Laura gets a good look at this person, who we later come to learn is Carmilla, it's the girl from she saw in her room when she was a young child. She thinks maybe it was just a dream as well by this point, and when Carmilla wakes up and sees Laura, she says, I saw you in a dream as well. So it's this weird kind of circumstance, and from there, of course, the whole vampire thing ensues. We find out a lot of strange events. We find out what happened to the general's daughter and this sudden death, and it had a pretty good atmosphere to it. It's told this really short little paragraphs throughout, and it's a fairly quick novella. Didn't grab me as much or feel that same feel of horrificness and things, or creepiness that Stoker portrayed in his book, but he had more, more depth to work with. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good story, and I kind of enjoyed it. The next challenge I met was read one of the host's favorite authors for Victober, and I had chosen Charles Dickens. One of the other choices was Elizabeth Gaskell. This particular book I chose actually is a collection of short stories, including Elizabeth Gaskell and Charles Dickens. I saw this haunted house. I'm thinking, oh great, it sounds really interesting. It includes stories by Elizabeth Gaskell, Wilkie Collins, and several others. There's the list of everybody included. And these are stories that were commissioned for a periodical called All the Year Round that was run by Charles Dickens. In this particular little collection, he creates a frame narrative of a brother and sister that knowingly buy a haunted house. And they're not bothered by it, they're kind of intrigued by it, but unfortunately their household staff is not so thrilled, and they are quitting like crazy. They just can't do their work. They're frightened. They can't keep a staff, basically. So the sister suggested, why don't we just take care of the household duties ourselves? Maybe invite some friends for this 3-month period that we're living in this house for the brother's health, and we'll share the duties and stuff. And then they all kind of come to this agreement that no one will discuss anything about what they see in the house, whatever ghostly appearances and stuff, until 12th night, when they will sit down and each tell their own tales. And that's what each of these short stories are. It sounds like a really great concept, but fails to deliver, because these short stories aren't really related to events that take place in the house. There are tales of despair and things like that, but they're or dreams that didn't come true, things like that, for each of the characters, but not, like I said, events that took place. I was looking for, like, oh, okay, while I was there, this happened and that, and I saw this, and something along that lines, but it was nothing at all like that. So, it says the resulting ghost stories thrill, shock, and amuse by turns. I think it failed to do all of those things for me. And I was so looking forward to it, unfortunately. The Elizabeth Gaskell story was very well written, so was the Wilkie Collins one, but again, not what I was expecting within this. The one thing I did like, and the one that kind of stands out because of the format is so different, is where the others are all short stories. One of them is actually a poem. This is by Adelaide Ann Proctor. And it was actually one of my favorite things within the book. And I'm not very big on poetry, but I'll just kind of read you the first stanza here. It kind of gave a really good tone for it. I said, "The lights extinguished by the hearth I leant, half weary with a listless discontent. The flickering giant shadows gathering near closed round me with a dim and silent fear, all dull, all dark, save when the leaping flame glancing lit up the picture's ancient frame. Above the hearth it hung. Perhaps the night, my foolish tremors, or the gleaming light, lent power to that portrait, dark and quaint, a portrait such as Rembrandt loved to paint, the likeness of a nun. I seemed to trace a world of sorrow in the patient face, in the thin hands folded across the breast. Its own and the room's shadows hid the rest. I gazed and dreamed, and the dull embers stirred, till an old legend that I once had heard came back to me, linked to the mystic gloom of the dark picture in the ghostly room." It's fairly long. It's several pages. But yeah, I like that one actually the best overall of anything within the book. So overall, a bit of a disappointment. So that was the second challenge I met. The third challenge is to read a book and watch a film adaptation of it. Now, my original plan was to read Silas Marner and watch a film adaptation. Now, I've actually watched the film adaptation, but I have yet to read the book. I have been participating in Sherlocktober, which Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, being also a Victorian author, kind of fits the bill. So, in the first 2 weeks of October, I've read 6 short stories from this collection within here, and I've actually watched all of those 6 short stories in the Granada television production starring Jeremy Brett as Sherlock Holmes. So, technically, even though it was my original choice, I have completed the read a book. 6 short stories, I think, or 12 rather short stories, pretty much compensates for a novel length, and watch their film adaptations. In addition to that, I am participating in the group read, which is to read Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. I'm listening to that as an audio version. I'm probably about halfway through. It's very slow going. I'm finding it a bit boring, to tell you the truth. So I decided to see if I could track down a film adaptation. So also kind of doubling up on this challenge. I found the Elizabeth Gaskell collection, and there is Wives and Daughters. I just started that. I'm on episode 1. It seems to be made up of 6 episodes. So kind of a mini-series. I'll probably end up watching the rest of these, Cranford and North and South. So almost done with that part of it. As part of Sherlocktober, in week 3 we are reading The Hound of the Baskervilles. So I'm just starting that. And of course, after I read this, I'm also going to be watching the film adaptation of it. So tripling down on this particular challenge. It's been quite some time since I've read The Hound of the Baskervilles. So a lot of it's very vague in my mind. So I'm kind of coming into it like almost new again. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. The other book that I had planned to read for Victober, which I'm not even sure at this point if I'm going to get to it with all the Sherlock Holmes stories I still have yet to read, and various other things, life in general. So I don't know if I'm going to get to Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. I was really hoping to. I've read her other book, The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and I really, really like that one. So I do hope to get to this sometime soon, but I doubt it's going to be in October. But anyway, that's the first 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks of Victober. That's my update so far. If you guys participating in it, how you doing? Have you met any of those challenges yet? I thought I'd film outside today, as it's fairly nice and sunny, even though it's only 47 degrees out here, and I'm wearing like 4 layers of clothing. So I'm going to go in and have some hot chocolate. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.